go. Constitution, take 2. Executive branch. Okay? The executive branch is made up of the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. The job of the executive branch is to do what with laws? Enforce laws. Okay? So, what we have, you have the president. He is going to be the chief executive of the United States. First thing we'll talk about is how he gets elected, which is what is known as the Electoral College. So in the Electoral College, the way that it works, okay, we are on page 13, by the way, if you are looking in the packet, okay? So the Electoral College, each state determines its number of electors by figuring out the amount of Congress people, right? So we have 8 members of the House. We have 2 members of the Senate, so we have 10 electoral votes, right?
Should we know that?
What's that?
Should we know that?
Yeah, that's a good thing to know. Yep. So we have 10 electoral votes, okay? That can change with the census, which is coming up next year. We talked about that a little bit, okay? So what will happen is that when we vote as a state, the electors then will make that decision. So in theory, an elector does not have to vote for who the state has voted for, though that has not happened. So you need to have a majority of the Electoral College. So you need to have, there are 540 total electoral votes. You need to have 271 in order to win. If there is a tie, 270 to 270, who gets to determine the presidency? Try again.
House of Rep.
The House, right? So this is what happened in 1800. We talked about this, okay? So that is where we get the Electoral College, okay? This changes, as we talked about with the 12th Amendment, where now you vote separately for president and vice president, right? So we don't have the same issue that we had before, okay? So when we look at the president, okay? The president serves a 4-year term. He must be 35 years old. So the House is 25, Senate is 30, President is 35. Okay? He must be a 14-year resident of the United States. And you have to be a natural-born citizen.
So to live in the United States for 14 years?
Correct.
14 years in a row.
No, just have to be here for 14 years. So, in theory, right, you could be born on a military base in Germany, right? But as long as you are born on what is considered American territory, that qualifies. So if you're born in a military base in Germany, you're still considered American. Okay? So you have to be a natural-born citizen, as does the vice president. Okay? Those are the only 2 positions that you have to have be natural-born citizens. Okay?
Does the vice president still be 35 years old too?
Yes, I believe so. So, jobs of the president. Okay? President can approve or veto laws. The president makes treaties with foreign governments. So this is where we saw with Jefferson when he did the Louisiana Purchase, right? He has the ability to do that. Okay? He is able to, or they are able to, nominate judges. Okay? So they can nominate judges to the federal court or to the Supreme Court. They appoint cabinet members. And last, they are commander-in-chief of the military. So each of these roles have a check on them. So the approve and the vetoing of laws, Congress can override that veto with the 2/3 vote. If you make a treaty, the Senate approves that treaty. If you nominate judges, Senate approves that. Cabinet members, Senate approves that as well. So if you think about when Trump took office and you had all these hearings with his cabinet people that were coming in, those were all Senate hearings. When Kavanaugh and Gorsuch were named and they went through the approval process, that is all checks on the president. As it turns out, in our current state, most of those checks will go straight on a party line. It is extremely rare that a presidential candidate will, or one of these candidates will not get approved. Okay? Succession. If the president dies, okay, we have a specific order in the Constitution of who will replace him. So you have the president first. You are then followed by the vice president. If the vice president dies, you have the Speaker of the House. If the Speaker of the House doesn't work, you have the President pro tempore of the Senate. Remember, the President of the Senate is the Vice President, right? The Senate pro tempore is a position that comes from the majority party in the Senate, okay? And you then go to the cabinet positions from the oldest one to the most recent one, okay? So the next one is going to be Secretary of State, and then it goes down from there, okay? Yeah.
Wait, so Speaker of House, they don't have to be 35 though?
Right.
So they could be president?
So in theory, right, the Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore of the Senate are both positions that are selected by the body themselves, right? I can't imagine a scenario in which they would pick somebody so young to be the leader of the House, right? But it's an interesting question of if, let's say, the Speaker of the House was not a natural born citizen, right? Then they would not be eligible to become the president. So we'll go down to the next one. Now, what are the odds of us getting to the Speaker of the House?
Like low?
It would be,
Never happened?
no. So we've had the vice president rise up. We've had the vice president resign, be replaced. That was with Gerald Ford. And then Gerald Ford ends up becoming president when Nixon resigns, right? But it would have to be, some major tragedy. So, where this would happen, right? Ideas of like this, if somebody was to bomb the Capitol during the State of the Union address, right? Where you have everybody there, right? That's really the only way that you're going to get to this stage. Unless, there are possibilities, but it's pretty, unlikely that's going to happen, obviously. Okay? The president is a civilian, okay? So he is a civilian commander of the army. A couple other jobs that the president has. He must inform the country every now and then about what's happening, right? This has become the State of the Union. So it is expected that the president will give a talk. And then the final piece that we need to talk about with the executive branch, Article 2, is our old friend, impeachment. Okay? So, as it says, Section 4, Article 2 of the Constitution, This is on page 16. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So we've already talked about how you cannot be kicked out of office for a disagreement politically, right? You must have committed a crime. So with the impeachment proceedings that are occurring right now, right, there are multiple things the Democrats seem to be looking at in the House, including dealings with Russia, dealings with Ukraine, the emoluments clause, which we talked about in our last one about making money from the presidency, right? These are the things that we are dealing with, okay? But that's it. So it's designed to be narrow. Trump has recently said that as president, he is basically, his argument is he's above the law. And the big thing that just came out last week that you might have seen, they asked his lawyer if it was the policy of the presidency that if Trump went and shot somebody, could he not be prosecuted? And they said yes, as president, they feel like he could not be prosecuted. Which is a really interesting political...
Isn't that a high crime?
So he could be impeached and then be kicked out of office and then be charged with the crime, they're saying. But in office, they're saying that he would have immunity from all of that stuff.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yes.
It's a really interesting perspective that we have going right now that we haven't seen up to this point. All right, executive branch. Questions about that? All right, let's go to Article 3 then, judicial branch. That's not an I, that's an I. So, what is the job of the judicial branch when it comes to laws? Interpret it, right? Okay. Why do they have that power?
They basically just said we want it.
What was it in? What case? That we all just learned?
You just learned that.
What was the case? Flip it around and you're absolutely right. Marbury versus Madison. Okay. So, when we look at the judicial branch, okay, justices, Supreme Court justices serve for life. The purpose behind this is that you are attempting to make this apolitical so that if you are nominated, if you become a judge, you are not concerned about making a decision based on an election. They can declare laws unconstitutional. They settle disputes. Involving the United States, as well as between states, right? So if Minnesota and Wisconsin disagree about something, Supreme Court would make that decision, okay? The Chief Justice runs the impeachment hearings. Anybody know who our Chief Justice is right now in the Supreme Court? Chief Justice is currently John Roberts. So if Trump was to be impeached, the Senate would try it, and Roberts would be presiding over it. Okay? If you commit a crime, you must be tried in that state. You must have a trial by jury. They cannot, if you commit a murder, if you murder somebody in Minnesota, they cannot try you in Wisconsin. Have to be tried in Minnesota. The only crime that is listed in the Constitution is treason, going against your country. Okay? It's the only crime that is defined in the Constitution. If you commit a crime and you are in Wisconsin, Wisconsin must extradite you back to the state that you committed the crime in. Okay? So you cannot be held there, right? You have to be brought back to the state that you committed the crime in. And states must respect each other's laws. Questions about that? So the executive branch and the judicial branch are pretty tight, right? There's not a lot that goes into it. Pretty clearly defines what people have to do, and then that's it. Okay? Questions? Good? Are there any questions from the legislative branch that you guys had from before? Okay, so